I'm going to be reading the preface as well as the first chapter of The Hollow by Jessica Verday. There are 3 books in this series, and I will be trying to read all of them within the next few months. I'm going to update as many times as I can today. Once this video is close to 15 minutes, I will be stopping, so let's hope that it doesn't get too far. Preface. They said she killed herself. Everyone was saying it. What started out as a rumor, quietly whispered among small gatherings of polite people, quickly grew into something that was openly discussed in large gatherings of impolite people. I was so sick of hearing them talk about it. They questioned me, over and over again, trying to find out if I knew what had happened, but my answers didn't change. Yet it never failed someone else would ask, as if one day my reply would suddenly be different. I didn't know, but I should have, and I've been haunted ever since. Chapter 1. Last Words. It was funny. At a time like this, wasn't I supposed to be thinking serious thoughts of eternity and the afterlife and all that? As I glanced around me at the small groups of people huddled around the room, it seemed like that's what they were all thinking about. Each somber face reflected their pious thoughts, but all I could think about was the hair dyeing incident. It was funny. I guess I should have been thinking about all the things I wanted to say, all the things I couldn't say, and all the things I'd never get the chance to say. But I didn't. It wasn't like any of this was really happening anyway. She's only been missing since June. June 9th. 68 days. That's not long enough for her to be dead. You can't have a viewing of the body if there is no body, and someone can't really be gone from your life forever if there is no viewing. It all works itself out. This was only an act, just motions we were going through. I stared at the closed casket a bit longer, and then shuffled off to the side as someone came up right behind me. The message was silent, but it was still there. You've had your turn, now move on. I moved on. Closer and closer to the wall I pressed myself, trying to blend in. A moldy, stale smell wafted around me, and I recognized the cloying odor of flowers past their prime, like the room itself had absorbed years of their stench. Putting one hand behind my back, I reached out to touch the yellowed lily of the valley pattern wallpaper. It was rough and bumpy under my fingertip, and covered every square inch of a room that looked like it hadn't been updated since 1973. It was awful. The room started filling up, and I shuffled to the left. Here the pea soup-colored shag carpet was completely worn through in several spots. Faded pictures of shepherds guarding their sheep decorated each wall, but they were all slightly water-stained and hung with gaudy gold wire. I was amazed at the overall tackiness. Why on earth would someone pick a room like this to gather a large group of people into? It had to be the ugliest room I'd ever seen. A bingo hall would have been more appropriate. But every time I thought about slipping out of the room and away from all these people, Mom would catch my eye and give me a look. That, "Sorry, honey, but it won't be much longer, I promise," look, which meant that it would be indeed much longer. Especially since Mom and Dad seemed more than happy to spend a full 20 minutes talking to every person who entered the room. So I stared at the ugly wallpaper, and that nasty carpet, and those gaudy pictures. I had to get out. I gave Mom the signal, or at least what I hoped passed for some sort of signal, that I was escaping for a walk. She didn't respond, but since she was halfway across the room, it wasn't like she could do anything to stop me. The nearest doorway took me to a hallway that ended in a large foyer at the front of the funeral home. The foyer was old and dusty, decorated with hideous fake flowers and fake wood paneling that covered the bottom half of each wall. Someone had apparently thought that it would be a good idea to continue the flower theme out here, and had pasted a green ivy border, which was just as awful as the lily of the valley wallpaper, directly above the paneling. It was not a good look. Then I saw a bench. The coat rack next to it was full, but the bench was empty, and all mine. Suddenly, I didn't mind that ugly wood paneling, or the even uglier ivy border. It looked quiet over there, on that bench, and I sat down to contemplate how nice it was that someone had been thoughtful enough to put it here just for me. But my thoughts were interrupted when 3 people came out of the viewing room and started walking toward me. Since the bench and the coat rack were positioned right next to the outside doors, I desperately hoped that they were leaving. I wasn't in the mood to force a smile and make small talk with people I didn't want to be around. They were all dressed in black, their viewing finest, I'm sure. Miss Horvick, a substitute teacher, was on the right, and I noticed Mrs. Kelly, the town historian, on the left. I didn't recognize the woman in the middle. Sleepy Hollow might be a small town, but that doesn't mean I know everyone who lives here. Their loud whispers disturbed the air, and I tried very hard not to listen to what they were saying, but I quickly gave up when something interesting caught my attention. I edged closer down the bench to listen.
"Trying to throw eggs at cars from the bathroom windows. 11 and 9 they were. 11 and 9.
Miss Horvath's gravely voice broke through as she spoke louder and louder. "Mm-hmm," someone murmured.
"Thank goodness I was there to stop them. After 10 minutes I just opened up the door and hollered that they had used up their bathroom time limit, and that they needed to make their way out of there. Good thing I did, too."
She huffed, her voice getting more excited.
"Wouldn't you know it, they came scrambling out with the eggs sticking out of their pockets. I was flabbergasted. Flabbergasted, I tell you."
Mrs. Kelly spoke up now. "The parents just don't care anymore. That's the real shame of it. Kids these days need to learn some manners."
"Children of all ages have no respect. No respect for their parents. No respect for their elders. None at all. That's what happened with that Kristen girl, I bet."
I listened closer as the woman I didn't recognize joined in. "She had no respect for her family. I heard she was doing all sorts of drugs, just like her brother." The outraged gasp of the other 2 ladies merged with my quiet snort of disbelief. Kristen would never do drugs. This woman obviously had her facts very wrong.
"It probably was drug-related,"
Mrs. Horvath agreed.
"These kids today are all doing the drugs. Everything's about the drugs."
Mrs. Kelly's voice, her strong agreement voice, about the drugs. "And what does it all boil down to?" The third woman paused, and then took over the conversation again. "No respect, just like I said. They have no respect for anything her poor parents." Miss Horvath and Mrs. Kelly quickly agreed, each stating several more reasons for the obvious downfall of society's youth. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Who were these people to spread rumors about Kristen like this? Everyone in Sleepy Hollow knew that Kristen's family had never gotten over the loss of their only son to a drug overdose 8 years ago. There was one thing that Kristen would not have gotten into. It was the drugs. Curling my hands into fists, I felt each fingernail dig sharply into my palms, and I tried to control my anger. But I couldn't take it anymore. These women were wrong, and they needed to know it. I jumped up to interrupt them, but then I saw Mom peeking out of the doorway from the viewing room. She saw me too, and raised one eyebrow. "There you are, Abigail." I knew that look, and that eyebrow. I stared Mrs. Kelly and Miss Horvath directly in the eyes. I stomped past them to prove that I'd heard what they'd said, and to let them know that it had pissed me off royally. They pretended not to notice. When I re-entered the lily room, I went to stand up front with Dad. He put his arm around my shoulder, and it was nice to feel the support. The conversation that I had overheard ran through my head, playing out over and over again. I wanted to confront those women and set the record straight, to tell them what I thought of people who would talk about Kristen like that, and how inappropriate it was. Ultimately, though, I just wanted to let them know how very, very wrong they were. I'll be continuing on the next video.